All good, mate. Ready when you are.
Okay.
Oh,
So,
Sal's now joined.
all right. So, hi everyone, and thank you for joining us in this Africa Talk Sports web conferences freestyle football session. So, for those who don't know me, I am Mustafa and the founder of S.I.R.E.M and a newly established Senegalese company which stands for Sports, International Relation, and Event Management, and one of the pioneers of the freestyle football in Senegal. So I have been getting involved in the world of freestyle football for over a year. I began working in this field in Cabo Verde, where I was hired as a sports and event manager for the freestyle football competition during the first African beach game. And that's where I had the opportunity also to be appointed as a key leader of the World Freestyle Football Association in Senegal. So the main objective of these web conferences, Africa Talk Sports, is to continue the dialogue with all stakeholders in sports in Africa during this period of COVID-19 through web conferences, and also to allow us to take a leap forward and look at how we can tackle the major challenge that our sport movement will be facing. So, and that's one of the reasons why we are here today talking about the future of freestyle football in Africa. So I won't finish my introduction without thanking you again for all the speakers who are present in this panel and our great moderator, Mr. Dan Wood. So without further ado, I will let Mr. Dan to start the panel. So have a productive conferences and hope that you will enjoy your time with us. So thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you, Mustafa. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Hello everybody and welcome to Africa Talk Sports. As Mustafa just briefly mentioned, this is a series of web conferences uncovering sports and events developments across the continent of Africa. And today we're going to embark on a little journey into the world of freestyle football. My name is Dan and I'm delighted to be moderating this session here today. Which in particular, we're going to look at the future. Okay, we're going to review what's gone on in the past, but we're going to look ahead at what is in store for the continent of Africa with freestyle football in mind. So we've compiled a wonderful panel of guests for you today with a vast experience across the sports industry, but especially freestyle football. And I want to start by just introducing them. Actually, I'm going to ask them to more thoroughly introduce themselves. I think it's more accurate that way. So to begin with, I'm going to bring forth Gabriel Bear, who is, well, we met because of your role as Director of Sport and Venues at the African Beach Games, but please can you let everyone know a bit about yourself?
Yeah, so thanks for the introduction, Dan. I am currently working at the Tokyo 2020 organizing committee for the Olympic Games, now that has also been postponed to 2021. I've been working a lot of Olympic Games before, Rio and London, and I'm essentially an expert in multi-sport events, which is where we met in Cabo Verde for the African Beach Games, which was, I think, the first time that freestyle football was in a multi-sport event. So that was a very good experience to have in there. I'll be talking a bit more about that later on, but I'm going to be mostly talking today about that interaction of freestyle football in these other multi-sport events and how we can improve and look to the future to see freestyle football in more of these events later on, and some of the other things to help improve freestyle football in Africa particularly.
Amazing. Thanks for joining us today. Up next, we have Miss Laura Biondo, all the way from Miami, Head of Women's Development at the World Freestyle Football Association. My apologies. Laura, tell us a bit about yourself and your experiences of Africa as well.
Well, first of all, hi, everybody. Like Dan said, I'm Laura Biondo. I'm a professional football freestyler. I've been doing this for 12 years. I have a couple of records to my name and championships won. And right now I'm also head of the women's development for the WFFA. And well, I've actually also had the pleasure to be in Africa for the African Championships, which enlightened me a lot about the potential that there is over there, especially for the female side of the sports. So yeah, I think it's great that we're having this talk.
Very, very strategically placed Guinness World Record certificate there in the background, I noticed as well. Well done. Excellent, thanks, Laura. Up next, we have Mr. Ashley McHugh, who can't definitely just ruined your name, I'm sorry. Ashley heads up the South African Association for Freestyle Football, the community, all the development locally in South Africa. Tell us more.
Hi everyone, the name is Ashley McHugh, head of the Southern region of Africa for freestyle football, and I'm also a professional freestyler myself, still active. So yeah, I've been freestyling for the past 10 years. So as a freestyler, but working with the WFFA for the past 4 years for the development of freestyle football in the Southern region of Africa. And lucky enough, for the past 3 to 4 years, we've been able to host championships in South Africa and see a huge growth on our side. And also now we're seeing that we have had the opportunity to have the African Championship, which I believe also are playing a huge and integral part in the growth of freestyle football on the continent. So yeah, now events like that, I believe, will inspire all other African countries to send their freestylers up, and we're just working on that to give more opportunities to all other African countries. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Ashley. Thanks again for your time today. Coming up next, I'm moving over to, I don't use this word lightly. There's not many people that can really be introduced as a legend, but I'm going to use it. Chris Nyokwana, also from South Africa. I've known you for many, many years, but I'm going to explain why I use that word a bit later on. But Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. Could you tell everyone a bit about you and what you're up to right now?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Christopher Njogwana from Cape Town, South Africa. Not a legend at all. Freestyle footballer. And I started freestyle way back in the day, 2002, till date. Still doing a lot of shows, and I've traveled extensively around the world doing freestyle, and did a lot of work with freestyle in South Africa up until maybe 4 years ago, when a tragic incident happened, but now trying to get slowly back at it. So, Christopher Njogwana.
Brilliant. Thanks for being here, my friend. And by no means least, I'm delighted that we've got also Mr. Valentine Ozibo here with us, who is the chairman and founder of Feet and Tricks, a man who has, in my opinion, completely changed the course and the opportunity for freestyle football across the continent of Africa. Val, thank you so much for being here. Please tell everyone a bit about what you've been up to.
Thank you so much, Daniel, and thank you, Mustafa, for putting this together. Well done, well done. And Laura, nice to see you again. And Ashley, pleasure. So like Daniel has introduced me, Valentine Ozibo is my name. I am just that person who has the love and passion for freestyle football. And for that reason, since 2017, the company that I founded, we've been in exclusive partnership with WFFA to basically grow and nurture the game of freestyle football in Africa through organizing the African Championships. And I'm glad to say that so far, so good. And just this afternoon, we also ran through a press conference where we want to talk about the plans for 2020. Despite the pandemic that we're going through, we hope we can still bring some excitement to the homes and of freestyle footballers, as well as the entire world community. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Val. And again, we'll come back to you for some more a little bit later on. So So again, thank you all for being here. It's a fantastic panel. I'm sure everyone will agree. To review for anyone who's just tuning in now, first of all, the aim of today is to look at the continent of Africa, look at the sport of freestyle football, look at what's happened in the past, and most importantly, look forward to the future and with what we all believe is enormous potential for raising participation, health levels, and opportunities for young people growing up in Africa, ultimately. If anyone at any point has questions that they would like to raise, please do raise them within the chat box function within here, or similarly, if you're watching this in the future from now, please do post your questions underneath the video and we'll get back to you as soon as possible to respond to every single one. So to begin with, I'm going to set the scene a bit more. So, and then I won't talk so much, I promise, because we want to hear from these specialists. But no, just to set the scene, we're going to look at the sport of freestyle football. And there may be some people watching who don't know so much about what's happened in the past. So freestyle football is a sport and an art. It's a very unique proposition, shall we say. It's a fusion of dance, of acrobatics, of tricks with a ball, and music in a way that comes together to encapsulate an incredible street culture. We've traced the history of this sport back actually over 3,000 years. So ancient dynasties in Southeast Asia, in particular in China, and I'm certain across the continent of Africa as well, to ball games where essentially this unchoreographed coming together of people with a ball started, and they still exist to this day. Freestyle as we know it today, though, and for the purposes of what we're talking about, is still very, very young, and that's part of the beauty and the opportunity here is actually the association. The World Association was only founded in 2011, which is obviously only 9-10 years ago now, and actually looking at it specifically in Africa. I mean, the birth of social media was one very important phase, I'd say, for connecting the world in general, but for realizing the talents around. And I remember back in, well, I do remember the very starts of this, and we referenced it a lot, but the likes of Kamalio, Said, and our good friend here, Chris Nyakwana, producing videos that were the first ones really to go viral, as was back then. Some incredible street tricks that people, the eyes were already on Africa in many ways, thanks to people like Chris. So again, that's why I like to use that word, because you are a true legend, Chris, whether you like it or not. But yeah, so and then to further Chris's story, 2008, he was the first man to represent his country from the continent, I do believe, internationally for the sport of freestyle football, where he went over to Sao Paulo in the first ever Red Bull Street Style final. We've also got, there's a number of other names I'd like to mention. One in particular is a gentleman called Abdullah, who resides, I believe, in Paris, Amsterdam, isn't he? Amsterdam, but he's from Algeria originally. And one of the most classic street performers in the world, really. Everyone knows his style is truly unique. And I think that's a common trend, actually. There's been a lot of African talent, just as you would find within the many sports, but especially football, who seek their treasures outside of the continent, which is a general story, but it's a shame as well. And I think that's something that we're really trying to look to the future to change, is how can we invest in the continent of Africa? How can we develop, nurture and support talent within the continent, so that it's not always about chasing dreams in different parts of the world. A few other key points to note in terms of where we've come from is again, Mr. Valentine here, who's with us. Back in 2016, we first met up and started our journey here. And what happened from that point was the professionalization of the production of freestyle. Prior to that, there was lots of events, and some brands such as Red Bull have been brilliant and very, very helpful across most countries to make local events happen. But never before had we managed to get the whole continent together. So with with Val and his team has helped. The first All-African Championships was produced in 2018, and that continues through to today, which is amazing. And also thanks to Gabriel, to Mustafa, and of course your colleagues, Jan, I believe Jan is watching here, and Andrew Groom as well, back when he was involved. Everyone of that team in Cape Verde really championed freestyle football and got us onto a stage for the world to see in a more Olympic environment. So a very massive leap forward for the sport was 2019, just last year. But the response, in our opinion, was phenomenal, and and something that we can hopefully build from here. So touched upon some of them. There's much more, but again, today is not about me talking. It's about learning from our specialists here. So I want to look at what the future's got in store, and I'm going to start by coming back to you, Laura, if that's okay.
For sure.
And yeah, so from your experience, first of all, you mentioned it briefly, but you touched upon the energy that you felt within Africa, within Nigeria especially. Tell us about your experience of judging, first of all, and then the talent that was on show. What was your opinion?
Well, judging was something pretty special because I lived the competition in Nigeria, and both the Nigerian Championship and the African Championship, in a very different way, because the passion and the love that was transmitted to me, not only as a freestyler and as a spectator, but a judge, was quite unique, because you saw these guys have this this special energy because of the opportunity that they were giving, and especially for the girls. That was something that I was very touched by. They were really passionate. This was for them something that was very, very important. It was like a life-changing moment to be able to be on stage. And thanks to Val and the team, they gave them that stage. So that made me realize and see how much potential there is, but also how much appreciation there is that can also be taught to outside of the continent. Like a lot of people, a lot of freestylers around the world can learn from that passion that these guys bring onto the stage. And it's something that I've also before lived in a way by seeing Chris perform, or also Ashley, or competing. They always brought this special energy. So I think that was something that I was really touched by throughout my experience of being there. And also through the audience, the interaction with people, the way the event was set up, the way that it felt like it wasn't just a competition, but it was like a party, like a big event where we're all involved. So those were the things that I think got to me, and I took with me in a very special and personal, sentimental way, because I think it opened my mind also onto how can we bring this into an international, even more international level, so people can learn and appreciate what Africa has to give us.
For sure. Sorry, that's just my son trying to call me. So in looking then within your role within the WFFA and the women's growth of the game, what can we do? What are the starting points here to get more girls engaged across in Africa in particular, do you think?
I think a very important part, and it might seem simple, but it is key. It's the support girls get from their fellow friends or freestylers, or even people organizing competitions or event. It could be just a word of comfort, or be like, hey, that's a great job. Or if it's a freestyler, giving them a tip. It's a support they need more on a moral and psychological level, for them to feel empowered to be like, okay, I can do this. Because for your first approach is you see mainly guys, so you can be a little bit intimidated to be like, okay, am I going to be able to do this? Do I have a spot for me to be able to develop this sport? Will I be able to be on stage? Will I be criticized? Will I be laughed at? Will I be told like, no, you're not good enough because you're a girl? So the main support I feel females need is those words of comfort. That is going to push them and motivate them to be like, okay, I can do this. I maybe start uploading more videos, or let me try and enter one of these international online competitions. So for sure, I think that's the first step as a community, to just to communicate positive to these girls and encourage them to try,
I think
to
it's the
push
events
themselves.
as well. Wouldn't you say as well? And from what we saw, it felt like actually there was almost zero fear of failure, in my opinion. It was like there was a lot more readiness to just get involved. And I think that's the spirit that is testament to the love of football across the continent, maybe. And maybe it really comes down to more event planners considering, I think, the females in particular, and allowing the stage time, allowing the competitions to be reflective of both men and women. After all, we're one of the only sports that allows that interaction to happen, right?
No, for sure. And the reactions of the girls when I was there was really impressive, because I did feel and hear that sort of overcoming of fear of like how I said, of maybe not having a chance or not being good enough. But there's still many that we don't see that don't feel yet ready or empowered to take part. So for sure, events like this, where they give the stage also to the female in an equal way as male, it's a key point. It's important, because the girls are going to see that. They're going to see like, okay, I'm having this opportunity to compete here or take part in this event, and there's other females doing it. Or even like how we did, like I know in past editions, other girls went from outside. I think this is also something that motivates them a lot. So really keep in mind and have present the female figure in events. It's important, and having that equal treatment with girls and guys in terms of the opportunities they get within an event.
Perfect. Thanks for that. Reminder to everyone, anyone who's just tuned in, please do keep the questions coming. Post them in the chat box below, and we'll get back to you towards the end of this session. Chris, I'm going to come over to you, to the beautiful Cape Town. Tell us a bit about your journey, I guess, a bit more about the sport and your love for it, your experiences. You've competed internationally. What does it mean to you? What does the sport mean to you?
I'm so happy to be invited, Mustafa and Dan, so thank you so much. So for me, as a freestyler who is not active in a competition sense, but now who does a lot of shows and LPs, and who sees the scene from the outside, just like any other freestyler that's watching on the live right now, I feel that African freestyle, though it's fairly new, at first I was the one like really crying about being neglected and not being invited in many competitions that were like huge competitions that were outside from 10, 11 years. No. When was the first Malaysian one?
I was going to say, I remember you messaging me ever since 2011 for sure.
Yeah. And but then I came to a realization, right? If you look at the standard of competition in Europe, it's really high, and how the guys out in Europe go about things. Maybe there's many factors in terms of remuneration and monetary value, like in terms of when they're doing shows and how they get paid, and compared to the guys here in Africa who are really viral in a sense, but then don't have that impact on social media, if you get what I'm saying. So the guys are very famous here in South Africa or in Mozambique or in Malawi, but don't have the same numbers on social media. But then you don't see those numbers, and also the guys maybe who out there who would want to have more representation from all over the world, but then they don't know who to call upon. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't know who to call upon. I think that was my always, because I was always advocating for African freestylers and guys who are actually better than me, to actually have them have a chance to go internationally and actually make a decent living, like what Laura said, when she saw the girls and the guys, when they went on stage, and they had this so much passion because they felt like it's a way of getting out of poverty, I would say, really to make a means of living, and also just making a stance for Africa. You know what I mean? I've always felt that, especially in Africa now, we're not recognized in that sense, being invited to international competitions, where the guys had really, really high standards, but then still had to learn from their European counterparts in terms of, like, when you're doing tricks, no broken combos from transition to one trick, and basically not just be content in doing tricks, facial expression and dancing, but actually doing the, I don't know if the freestylers will actually get me, actually executing, like, you know, high quality intensive tricks. I don't know, I've been chopping all over the show. I didn't really talk about me because it's not really about me, but I'm talking about for the freestylers and their frustrations that they've had, that they don't have the opportunity to go to international competitions. So I'm very, very happy that to have a person like Val, first time I'm meeting you there, Val, to actually come up with a competition like that. And the prize money and the prize that they offer is probably like the best that I've seen in the world. Having an opportunity to win a car, opportunity to win money, and not only the first 3 people, maybe like 5, 6, everybody getting money, you know what I'm saying? So in that sense, it only started in 2017, but already leading in terms of rewarding the hard workers, rewarding the guys that should be rewarded. You get what I'm saying? So
I do, and I think it must be frustrating on one level, because you know you've lived this sport as your life for so long, and now it's starting to get to that stage. But it's amazing that you're part. Come on, there's a bit of it. It's beautiful, but that you're still involved and you're so active, and the fact that we've got, you know, Ashley now leading the way in your territory as well, building events, building more structure, that can only go towards hopefully being that support system. If I understand right, the missing link really was the support system around the athletes, right? There's no localized go-to to help build their prominence or build their awareness internationally.
And not only that, when it was time, when not your World Cup, but it's over now. My frustrations were the lack of invites for 1 or 2 African guys to, like, it's almost like in the FIFA World Cup, 32 countries around the world, and you only got 5 spots for Africa. So that was my frustrations, not having enough African representation in what is called the World Cup. You know what I mean? Of World Championship. Yeah. There was none of that. You will get a World Championship and there's no African involved. So it didn't make sense to me. That was my frustrations. Yeah. And
let's change it. Let's change it.
Yeah. So I'm happy to have people like Val and Gabriel who are here in Africa who are trying to, you know, give the young freestylers of Africa an opportunity to showcase and be big names in the sport. And I truly believe that if you could have Kamalu in 2010, who lost in the final, that then really, really shows that there is a huge, you know, opportunity for the guys in Africa one day of lifting any world, or even in Prague or Super Bowl to win, or now the online competition is going to happen now to actually win, or even be in the final again of the World Cup, you know? Yeah.
It's impossible to stop people kicking footballs across the whole continent, that's for sure. Compared to my part of the world where I live, where it's skepticism, it's like, why would you do that? What's the point? It's just pure love for a ball, and that we need to harness, and we need to grow more, you know, for the rest of the world. So, thank you, Chris. That was awesome. Reminder again to anyone tuning in now, we're here talking today about the future of the sport of freestyle football across the wonderful continent that is Africa. And I'm delighted to welcome some amazing guests here who are talking about their experiences and their ideas for the sport and in the future. So up next, I'm going to jump over to Gabriel, and I've got lots of questions for you, Gabriel. I'm afraid I'm going to put you on the spot. That's right ahead. But no, with your thank you, first of all. For everyone who doesn't know, Gabriel was the sport manager and the venues manager at the African Beach Games 2019 in Cabo Verde, where he really championed the sport. I mean, on a personal level, you were phenomenal in all your help there on the ground. Give us a bit, first of all, maybe about that experience. So, you know, what was it like for you seeing freestyle up close and personal for the first time, really, I guess, live, right? You've seen it virally, but maybe not live.
Yeah, for me, it was a really good experience because the first thing that really impressed me was when I really first saw it was at the training sessions, and just the camaraderie between all the athletes was really good. And that's one thing that what Laura said in terms of that support. I think there is that support, but maybe it just needs to be a bit pushed more towards the women for the sport, because everybody that was there was really supportive of each other. And just to give a bit of a background, so Dan and I, we talked to each other. I got to a point that was almost every day, because we had first scoped 32 male athletes and 16 female athletes, and the numbers just kept dropping. Mostly because of something that I'm going to talk about here, which is the recognition of freestyle football. Because a lot of the Olympic committees didn't recognize freestyle football, and for our event, you had to be linked with the Olympic committee. And a lot of teams were like, we don't know who these guys are, we don't know who their coaches are, and I had to call them and go, they don't have coaches. There's an association, talk to this guy, and the numbers just kept dropping and dropping. It got to the point where when it got to 8, I was like, Dan, what do we do? Do we pull the plug? Do we keep going? And thankfully, I don't know if it was you or me, definitely you guys wanted to keep going, and we're just like, no, let's just do it. We can do it. And the 8 guys that went there were just fantastic. I think a couple of them are even online now. So thank you guys so much. It was a fantastic event. But the camaraderie between everybody in those training sessions, supporting each other, even during competition, they were all cheering. To me, that was really the beauty of the sport, was seeing each other, recognizing how well the other one was doing. So that bond to me was the strongest thing, really.
Amazing, thank you. Yeah, and yeah, I do remember those quite heated discussions and messages exchanging, trying to understand. And I think that brings me on to the next question. Really, was, you know, that lack of awareness of the sport, first of all, but then because, you know, the sport is so new, having systems in place that adhered to any kind of Olympic-esque criteria is, we felt very out of our depth in many ways. So what is needed? What are the next steps in terms of recognizing this sport on a country level to gain more awareness?
I think that the first step has already been taken, which is creating, first you have the World Freestyle Football Association, then you need to create the ones by the country, in each country, and then they need to go associate themselves with the Olympic committees and also with the ministries of sport. It's really important to be recognized by one of those, hopefully both, because if there are future events, such like the beach games, and we've talked about the Youth African Games and the inclusion in there, they're going to be linked to the Olympic committees. And it's the same thing that Chris mentioned of opportunity. So many athletes missed a great opportunity because they simply didn't recognize freestyle football as a sport. I remember I called one of there was one country, Zambia, brought one athlete, and it was a freestyle footballer. And they were about to drop out completely from the games. And I called them up myself and I said, look, you have this fantastic freestyler, bring him. And they're like, no, it's going to be expensive. You have to bring him and the coach. I'm like, there's no coach, just bring him. That's all you need. And that worked, thankfully. But yeah, it's really creating those opportunities and those links. And I think once you create the country association, just go introduce yourself to the Olympic Committee. Be like, look, this is who we are. We're recognized by the WFFA. These are the competitions we've been going to and that we have. And just so they actually know you. So then when another opportunity comes up, they can get taken on.
Brilliant. Yeah, there's some definite steps and actions needed. And I think, you know, for the structure that is in place, you know, there's country leaders in each country around the continent need to look at their network locally and see about ways of introducing that. And some of the benefits we were talking earlier, just finally really about some of the key standout benefits, again, just to emphasize them, that shouldn't be overlooked. You know, aside from the fact that we all know all you need is a ball, and that's will continue to be the slogan, if you like, for the sport forevermore. You mentioned some really interesting things about venues and about well, this crazy period of time we're going through now with social distancing. Maybe could you just elaborate, just to give some confidence to those people in terms of talking to wider parties about the benefits of freestyle?
Yeah, so one thing that was great about freestyle, so I was the director of the sport and venue. So we had 11 sports, and we had to worry about which sport is going where, doing what. With freestyle, I never had to worry about it because I knew if there was a flat surface, you guys could do it. There was even a point that we had the karate tatamis down, and I had asked the karate, one of the karate volunteers, if we could break it in, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you can even play football on it." So I was like, "Yeah, sweet." So I put the freestyle guys to play freestyle on it. They were loving it until I found out that the guy was kidding and he didn't want people with shoes on it. But really, any place that was kind of flat, they would just find and train. So in these games, so in these multi-sport games, you always have like the sports manual, and you have where each competition is going to be, where each training venue is going to be. So we had like training venues for beach soccer in this beach handball, this area. Freestyle football, I put all you need is a ball. And everybody else was like, wait, this isn't, where are they actually going to train? I'm like, but that's it. If they have a ball, they can do it wherever they want. That's just how the sport works. And that was another thing that was so good to work with freestyle. Is one sport I didn't have to worry about in terms of venues. I remember at one point we wanted to put freestyle on the stage that we had like a lot of the shows on, and the WFFA guys were like, as long as it's, you know, this many meters squared so they don't fall off, that's fine with us. I'm like, cool. But we ended up putting it where we had the basketball event, and it was a full house when it was there. So it was really impressive when we had everybody there. It was definitely one of the best days of the games was when freestyle was on. It really was a big party. The quality of the competition was great. The crowd was really into it. It was really a great event.
Great to hear. Thank you. Moustapha, I've got a little note to bring you back into the table at the moment. Is there anything else you'd like to add maybe about your experiences? Because we obviously met there at the same time.
Well, I felt me and him, you, Dan, and the players who was over there can help us and help us actually for the future, because I start doing the freestyle football after that game. And I remember like when I was leaving Sal, the last day I saw Gabriel, he told me, whatever you was doing in your country, keep doing it. And he gave me a gift, and that gift, whenever is about the freestyle football, and whenever I feel down and I saw it, I remember what he said to me, whatever you're doing in your country, keep doing it. And once I came, you know what's happened. I took the freestylers, I took them on the TV. They won on a TV show on the final of the African Cup football. I took them on the national TV. They do them freestyle stuff. And after I organized freestyles competition for them, and now what we're doing in Senegal is we're doing some prestation in schools and university. So we're going in the school and the university, and we how is it called? We're just doing some prestations. And I think if that was not the good experience that we have in Cabo Verde, all these things won't happen right now or even today with these conferences also. So thank you, Gabriel, for supporting and bringing me into the world of freestyle game. So thank you.
No problem. Dan, if you don't mind, I just want to add a little thing in terms of the flexibility of freestyle football. One thing, the first thing I thought of when this whole pandemic started going on and going crazy, I was thinking of all the athletes and how they can't train and everything. And the first thing I thought was like, freestylers are probably the best off athletes right now because they can train, again, all you need is a ball. and even compete. And it was funny, like we started talking today about online competition, and you're like, yeah, we got that. Because you can do it. You can still have full-on competition. So that is one thing, not just because of the pandemic, but another big problem. And again, the opportunities that Chris was talking about is the cost of getting to a competition. If you're somewhere in Africa, the cost of getting to a competition anywhere else is a lot more expensive than if you're in another country, which again was one of the reasons why we only had so few athletes in Cape Verde. Because when it came down to leaving behind a freestyle footballer that they didn't know, or bringing in a swimmer that they did know, they brought the swimmer. So with online competitions, you get rid of that cost because it can get quite expensive. And then once you create that recognition, it is one of the things that, one of the recognitions that you need to show to the Olympic committees and the sport ministries is that this is a competitive sport. So if you have, look, I've already competed in this online competition, I came in first, second, or third, you know, recognized by these, it shows that you have that competitiveness. So that is the other beauty of freestyle. I think it is the sport for the moment that we're in right now, because it can happen with almost no difference than you would in a live event.
Amazing. Thank you again.
Sorry there, Dan. Can I just come in? Sorry. Yeah, I just want to agree with what Gabriel is saying. So basically, where we're at right now is where freestyle was in 2001. Back in those days where the community was actually online, especially with something like the Nike football chain, where everybody was at home taking videos. You got famous or you trended because of the skills that you were doing at home. And we used to recognize people like Scorer, people like, sorry, who's the guy from Canada?
Steve Elias.
Yeah, Elias. That's Swell. Elias. That's how I got to know most of the people from around the world through the online, which is so much easier in that sense. And also what's lovely about this time and also going forward with this online competition is that everyone can now have eyes on themselves, to themselves, can be seen. Whereas before you will have maybe local qualifiers and we'll only see the top winner going to the World Championships. Whereas now you get to be seen by the whole world. Posting, yes, maybe the first qualification from May, whatever, you won't be seen. But once maybe you didn't make it to the top 100 or whatever, you can still post and be seen by everybody online. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And also just one more, just going forward, this is now to the freestylers, especially in Africa, is for them to actually invest in getting a camera or asking someone who's got an iPhone that can take proper videos to actually try to mimic and look at guys like PWG, to mimic and look at women like Laura who post stuff and how they post in terms of quality, because at times we lack in that sense of how we post. Maybe it's not quality, maybe we don't put the proper hashtags, or we just have to learn and to learn from the international guys and how they're doing things, because you can't just now be loading clips that are blurry and whatever. So it's from us going forward to actually learn from the guys that are doing great things internationally, and just those little things of how to upload and how to get proper numbers so that you can be recognized and you can actually make money within your own country, within your own city, instead of like maybe traveling abroad to make the money.
Really good point. Yeah, thanks for that. And thanks, Gabriel, again for those extra points. It's all gearing up really nicely to a big finale here with Valentine talking about the next steps for the continent. So thanks for that. Ashley, your turn. You've been sitting patiently there in your home in Johannesburg. tell us a bit about the challenges, especially. But I want to look at setting up events. So you've now done a few for the South African community. You've helped out internationally with the WFFA events and the African Championships as well. What challenges have you faced to get those events going? And tell us about your experience of them.
Well, in South Africa, one thing which we have been looking at is, as much as freestyle is amazing when you're watching it and all of that stuff, when you're trying to organize an event, I think a venue also plays a crucial part. Especially, I'll make an example with the 2019 South African champ, which we had. You know, you have options of saying, where do I go about to get a venue to organize this competition? Am I going to charge people to come to the venue, like have an entry fee? But then you realize that the following is not that strong. If we were to hire a venue which maybe is a 3,000 seater, maybe we'd probably have 100 or 200 people coming to witness that. So I think it's also about just thinking outside of the box, which I then used to conquer that challenge, because I went to the biggest mall in the country, which is like the Carlton Center, where we had the competition. It's one of the busiest, and it was just crazy. And I realized by doing that, having the competition there, it also brings attention to freestyle. Even though people are not gonna pay, but the amount of people which are gonna be at the mall gonna witness the top athletes from South Africa competing, you know. So I was like, that very.
Oh, we've got a pause.
Sorry about that. Someone tried to call. So yeah, I think that was one of the barriers. So I always had the thing to say, the more exposure we get, I think the more opportunities we can then lobby and try and, you know, use and to get more sponsors and stuff like that. Because even getting sponsors, if your event is not a quality event and you don't have, as Chris was saying, we need to invest in infrastructure, especially for us, because I can't go to sponsors with low quality videos. The content is not appealing to watch and it's not of high standard. So I think it starts with you as a person in whatever country you're in, because already in Africa it's hard to get sponsors for anything, you know. It's very hard. Even I used to play soccer, Chris used to play soccer. I would tell you, even though soccer is one of the biggest sports in the country, it's so hard to get any type of sponsorship, you know. And if I were to make an example of how hard it is, I'm just gonna make a practical example. Might be wrong, I might be right. But if you look at 2019, in the freestyle football in Africa, out of 54, 56 countries, I think only 4 countries had a live event, which was, I think, Egypt, Nigeria, and South Africa. So I'm not gonna say other guys are not trying. I know there are challenges. It's very hard to try and get those sponsorship, but one thing which I'm just also picking up from this, I forgot the guy's name now. He just said that we need to also sort out our structure, try and register organizations, like have a South African Freestyle Football Association in our country. You know, it's those small baby steps which we need to implement, us as the leaders and the head of freestyle in our country, so that once our structure is sorted, things tend to move a little bit easier. It makes life a little bit easier. You have a point of references, but those are just the biggest challenges I think in Africa we have in terms of getting sponsorship. And because I organized the event and it ended up being successful, but a lot goes into it, because organizing in a public space, I had to get insurance. And imagine if I did not have any company which I was working under to organize the event. You know, you need to have public liability insurance. Should a freestyler break their leg, or maybe should a ball hit someone who's just passing by at a mall, you know, someone might sue you because that ball could land maybe in their face and they slip. You know what happens in these movies.
What are you talking about? You're professionals. You're always under control. I've never ever seen that. No,
Well,
no.
yeah.
Go on. No, I was just going to say, I think very fair points, and yes, the bigger this gets, the more the professionalism is needed in terms of the staging, the venue. But one thing I think you're almost take a few steps back, and I remember seeing actions that you guys were doing for sure. I mean, looking down at South Africa, you've always been blessed with lots of freestylers, I guess, which helps. But I remember activations and meets, you know, training meets where you would just go to the people. It wasn't about setting anything up too dramatically crazy, but creating something, some sort of get together in order to get momentum. And I think that's, if you look at most other countries anywhere in the world, that's where it starts. It needs a few more people to take the initiative, I think, to start enjoying freestyle for the beauty that it is. And through doing that, yeah, and especially by, in the exact same way you chose the Carlton Centre because it was right, you know, the people were already there. It wasn't about ticketing or overcomplicating it. It was going to the eyeballs. And I think that's one healthy point I think that more countries in Africa should possibly consider, is how do we get freestylers together in high density areas so more people can actually experience and be a part of it. Because ultimately, yeah, one of the other beauties I always talk about is how it doesn't matter if you're a beginner or a pro, you train together. You know, it's a family. When you see the freestylers training, it's like, yeah, come on in, come on and show me something, and it's a really nice exchange at all times. So I think it's going back to the roots of what you did at the beginning is maybe what we need to see in more countries around Africa.
Yeah, and if I may add, sorry, yeah, no, something that I see similar with what the female scene has been is that at least when I started, we didn't have anything. We didn't have competitions. We didn't have platforms. And throughout the years, one of the things that has showcased and pushed the female side was these online competitions. And I think that with the potential that there is in Africa, you just have to find maybe those creative ways where maybe it's not a live competition with the biggest stage, but maybe it's other types of things that you can do, and like the online, that it's strong right now because especially of the pandemic. It's something that I think can be taken advantage, because what you need to do is just to get more people involved, get them to know that this is a sport that you can do anywhere, make them feel part of the community, and that slowly will build up the numbers, the participation, the places where more people participate and lead to those events and those competitions that we want to do also there. So I think it's also something that we should take advantage of, is these creative small ways of, how Dan says, to take it back in a way to the roots and use that to massify the sport in the continent, get people to participate, and that will slowly also lead to then people wanting to do something or invest or do organized competition like Val does and like how you guys have done.
Yeah, one thing which I was just saying now is that, and I'm not gonna use. I think there's one thing I learned going to Super Bowl. It showed me a different side of freestyle football compared to what I know. In Africa, I think maybe Chris can attest and others. People want to do something knowing where they're going, like where is the direction. I'll make you an example. When I started freestyle, I was just freestyling for the passion. But when I realized that there were competitions and certain things happening, I started to take it seriously, because there was that certainty to say, okay, if I get good to up to a certain level, I'll be able to go there, I'll be able to do this. Certain opportunities would open for me. But after I attended Super Bowl, I was not about that life of saying, okay, maybe I'm just freestyling because I want to win a competition or it's about money. Like, the passion was there, and I think that's how I easily generated into becoming a leader. So, but if some incentives are there, it helps the culture grow, it helps freestylers grow. Wherever since I started being the leader in my country, South Africa, I think I have brought about close to 7 or 8 different freestylers to Super Bowl, you know. From when I would organize small competitions, would say instead of giving someone maybe money, would say, here's a flight ticket. You're gonna come with me to Super Bowl and experience freestyle at its peak to also drive their passion as a whole, you know. And so that's one of the other things which I think, as much as Daniel was saying that we need to like go back to the roots, I think now it's gonna be easier if our roots have a certain structure. Because with how everything is happening now, there are a lot of opportunities, and with the online space, it also helps to find new people. Because you know when we just put up something on Facebook, a new guy we may have never met can like boom and come up online, you know. As much as the pandemic has stopped a few things, but I feel like it has also opened up opportunities for us to get a database of more freestylers, you know. And
great point. Yeah. Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Ashley. And maybe we'll come back to any more ideas you've got there a little later. Finally, I've been keeping this man waiting for a long time. Reminder, first of all, we're here today talking about the future of freestyle football, thanks to our friends at S.I.R.E.M Sports for hosting and setting this all up. Thank you to everyone for your points so far. Reminder, if anyone's got any questions or points of view, please drop them into the chat box so that we can get back to you. And yes, finally, Mr. Valentine Ozigbo, sorry. Thank you so much for your patience and your time. You've had a long day, I know. We've been on a few other calls together already today. Looking ahead, you're the perfect man to bring in. You've already established some phenomenal opportunities for the sport to grow in Africa, from your beloved land of Nigeria. And going forward, I want to just start by just saying that Val was one of the first people I actually spoke to as soon as the lockdown around this pandemic kicked in, and our conversation was actually, there was no mention of it. Within the first few moments, it was all about, okay, so what are we going to do next? And that's what I love most, is that Val's attitude to freestyle is all about opportunity and the next steps and how we're going to create more opportunities for freestyle in Africa. So delighted to welcome you here. Val, do tell us a little bit more about some of the plans for the rest of this year, at least.
Thank you again, Daniel. And please let me also say a big well done and thank you to Chris and Gabriel. I'm meeting you for the first time, but listening to you, I'm very excited to be in your midst this afternoon. And Mustafa, you've actually done a wonderful thing putting this together, because the name of this game is collaboration. When I listen to comments made by the panelists, it's heartwarming to actually see that we've all come a long way, and there's a lot more we need to do, and we need to collaborate more to be able to achieve those. Before I go into what plans for this year and going forward from our perspective, let me share a little story about how I got into this. Just sitting down in a hotel with some friends, and they showed me a couple of freestyle football videos. I loved them. Everybody was like, wow, wow. And I was like, how come we don't really have a professional, freestyle football events taking place? How come this has not been well structured, well professionalized? And we took a decision that, okay, let's do something about this. This is a huge skill set and talent that these guys possess that we must have. We know we have a lot of these in Africa. So how come it's been this way? So I actually went on social media searching for the word body. There must be a body that is involved in this, and that's how I found Daniel. It was and some friends of mine had also mentioned his name. So I found him and we chatted, and then before you know it, we were already discussing how to get it started in Nigeria. I flew over to London, met up with Kanuwankwo, and we signed a partnership agreement that speaks to what we can do. And I made a promise to Daniel, and I'm glad to see that those promises have come to pass. I said to him, I want to, with my colleagues, organize one of the best ever events in Nigeria and other parts of Africa, if possible. So that 2017, I insisted that Daniel should come to Lagos to witness the very first, and he did. Glad to see that, listening to him, that Val, you actually broke a number of records here. These have been mentioned. We had one of the most female participation. We had the most prize money. And even in terms of organization, it was world class from what he had judged. And that encouraged us. And that's why we took it to the African Championship. But I must say it's not been easy. It's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of sacrifice. I wouldn't mention to you guys how much I've personally invested in this. And you may want to ask for what reason. And it's simply because of the love and passion for the game. Just listening to the youngsters, manifest their skills and seeing the joy in their face. And for me, and for a lot of these young freestylers, giving them an opportunity of their lifetime that they've not seen before. Some of them, we have had to get them the international passport, fly them on the first airplane, took them abroad and put them in a global competition. They came back to become heroes in their villages. And yes, there's not enough money to go with it yet, and they're not able to meet all their demands financial-wise, but their life has been changed in somewhat way. And I am very happy to see that there are a lot of other parties who are doing different stuff. And so this is time for us now to come together as one body. And I'm happy that with the leadership that WFFA has been providing in this regard, I must again say a big thank you to you, Daniel and Lucas. If not for the way you've handled this game, I'm sure we wouldn't be even talking about this right now. So what next? I think is really about collaboration. Like I said before, it's about deepening this game. It's about widening this game. It's about localizing it. It's about mainstreaming it. And it's about standardizing it. And it's also about monetizing it. I've mentioned a couple of words to use to summarize some of what I've heard here today. We as Africans will need to figure out how best to organize these events. It's not easy. Moving from one country to another within Africa has been very expensive. Last year, for instance, we had to even take on the cost of conveying and flying people from different countries to Nigeria for the championship. I don't want to say it so that nobody requests for such again, because that's the last time we're going to do it anyway. But the truth is that these are efforts we've had to put in to see that we succeed to the extent we have. And I've also spoken about deepening. And by this, and mainstream is actually about making sure we take, freestyle football to the kindergarten, to the schools, so that it can actually grow from there. People can get started even early in life and becomes part of the inter-house, inter-school competitions, so that the professionalization can actually start from there. And then, of course, if this can find its way to the big games, to the Olympics, I remember, Daniel, when we made an effort to try and put the Nigerian winner in front of the African winners were in front of the Chelsea match. I don't know, it was Chelsea, Arsenal, can't remember the match. But yeah. Unfortunately, Titi couldn't get a visa to UK, and that's what dashed that opportunity. But the idea was, even the men, the proper game of football, see how we integrate this. And we're also discussing with for instance, in Nigeria, we're talking to the Nigerian Football Federation to see how in the local leagues here, especially at every halftime, we can see how freestyle football becomes part of the game. So when you start to do this, that big audience that sees this other game will see freestyle football, and that's how we can deepen the sport. And so that localization and mainstreaming is so important. And then, of course, we need to of course, see how we can standardize this and see that we can actually organize competitions across other countries and build up to the regional championship, to the continental championship, and eventually to the global championship. And there's a point that's been made here about you know, having enough, putting back to the table for the freestylers. We need to also figure out how best to monetize the opportunities. I keep saying this, and I have to keep repeating that. When I watch freestyle footballers, I honestly marvel at the amount of skill that they possess. And I ask myself, why are they not being celebrated the way a musical icon or a Hollywood or Nollywood guy is being celebrated? And that's the part that we need to figure out so that there can be enough money on the table for these freestylers. And because the idea for me getting into this is to see that this becomes an alternative job where they can just become professionals and make money and, you know, fend for their families just with this game. And that's the part we need to figure out. We need to figure out the right business model for them so that they also don't need to cheapen themselves, because here in Nigeria, I see when they get for an event and they paid some nickels, and I was like, well, I can't always provide for all their needs. So maybe they try to negotiate. So we try to see how we can step in to negotiate on their behalf, to see that the brands actually recognize and value these guys, and not think that because they are freestylers, you can get them for a penny. So, I mean, I've said a lot of things already. I know I don't have all the time, but for this year, we thought that just like listening to Gabriel and I think Chris, yes, all you need is a ball. I was going to tell Daniel, but when it comes to events, all you need is not just ball. We need to add some money and all of that. But yeah, but in the game of freestyle football, actually all you need is a ball. And so this is one event that can meet with the physical distancing rules when it comes to this pandemic. And so they can afford to get it done. And so why don't we figure out how best to harness this trend and push it? And in fact, we could save lives, because I know a lot of people are, you know, depressed and distressed, just staying at home, being bored. So, and this is why we have come up with this Freestyle Unlocked Africa 2020, which is basically to bring both the professionals and everybody else to come together and enjoy the game of freestyle football. Let's use it here to even deepen this game. Let it be in the face of people, so that next year, hopefully this whole thing is over, we can go back into a proper stage. The idea for us at Feet and Tricks is to give that big stage. And we don't intend to do this in Nigeria all the time. No, it's actually for us, the intention is to move it around other countries within Africa. We actually tried to do it last year, but because of difficulty with sponsorship, we were forced to remain in Nigeria. So the intention is to push it around so that we can begin to grow this continent-wide. And I mean, so I want to say that we need to do a lot more. We need to come together. I'm glad that we have this opportunity. There's a lot of discussion we need to go, that we need to go on beyond here, but this is a good start. Again, thank you, Mustafa.
Amazing. Thank you, Val, for that. That's, I'm sure, enlightening as well for many people, just to learn a bit more of the depth of your work and the journey that you've been on here. So yeah, thank you on behalf of the community, I can safely say.
Thank you.
Fantastic. There's been so much raised there that I'm having a hard time thinking of summarizing here. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to move for a bit now, as we've spoken to all of our guests. Just to a couple of questions that have been raised and flagged them to the group. There's been a few interesting points. First of all, a few credits actually. A few people tuned in here that's definitely worth mentioning. We've mentioned one, Mr. Steve Elias, who's the president of our World Association, one of the first freestylers back in the 80s in Canada, who was heavily involved in the sport. Daniel Rosenboom, who heads up the social media and comms for the sport on the channel I Am a Football Freestyler. He's made a good point actually around the Cape Verde, the finals. He actually posted one video, I don't know if you saw this, Gabriel, which has over 500,000 views. So instantly, within a few days, it was one of the most tracked videos actually that he was posting out, and probably some of that was that energy you were talking about from the crowd, right? Must have been picked up on. Then we've got an interesting question from, where has it gone here? Eloise Reed. Are there ways to earn money other than sponsorship? Which I think we've had lots of responses. Thanks to everyone for contributing there. And I think the clear answer is yes. Something that you mentioned or has been mentioned a few times here is there's clearly a bit of a battle with any sport, and this is not unique to freestyle, with any sport that has that appeal in such a global variety as it does, between amateur and professional. And this is also obviously true for Olympic versus non. There's so many decisions to be made across the journey of the growth of the sport. And these are all very common problems. So this is something that I don't think we should all be too worried about. It's a frustration, probably more than a worry, but there's so much that can be done, but also that could be to the detriment of another part of the sport if it goes down the Olympic route one day, let's say. So there's lots of considerations to bear in mind there. But yes, the sport is in social media. It's about live appearances. It's about coaching workshops. There's so many ways in which you can enjoy this sport, and not forgetting pure joy. So doing it just for the love of expressing yourself with the ball, which I believe is probably how it all started for certainly yourself, Chris, back in the day, and Kamalio and the boys. There wasn't any money involved there, was there? Good. Okay, and Gabriel, is it time for a Nollywood movie on freestyle? Yeah, I think it definitely is. Don't you think? Well, is that one project to head towards the Nollywood community?
Actually, on that point, interestingly, I had engaged one of the Nollywood superstars to agree on a proper script and use that to push the content of freestyle football. But when I saw the bill, I said, hold on a bit, let's, but still work in progress. But beyond that is also gamification. There's a lot that can happen leveraging on e-platforms, on, I've seen that comment also made about the YouTube ads, but it's also, video games, mobile games. This is a huge industry that I believe freestyle football can plug into. I've had this conversation earlier with Daniel. There's a lot I think we can do to create what I call shared prosperity for the key stakeholders and make this game sustainable and long-lasting. So movie is one, and mobile game is another.
Very good. Thank you for that, Val. Okay, I think we're heading towards a summary. There's been a few more questions, but we rather than try to attempt all of them right now, we're going to respond to everyone post this session. Would anyone like to close off with a few words, maybe a few motivating words to try and inspire the next generation of African freestyler coming through, or just in general to wrap up what's been said today? Maybe anything from your point of view, Laura?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think that it's always important to just stay true to yourself, to your identity, to your values, to your culture. This is something that I also tell the girls in several parts of the world where they keep maybe looking out to Europe and comparing themselves. And I say it's important that we look to what the rest of the world is doing to take inspiration and motivation from that and learn from that, but also just look what we have as unique. And I think in Africa, there's a lot of uniqueness that can be showcased, and we need to find the way to make that uniqueness be known to the rest of the world, because that's the potential Africa has for it to to have a really successful freestyle scene. So for sure, to the new freestylers, to all those people that are involved in the sport, it's just to keep working hard every day. A little bit every day goes a long way. And to all those people that are organizing events or are involved in that part, well, first of all, a big thank you to putting this trust and passion and love and investment into our sport, and to just always, again, think with your heart and what is your uniqueness, and bring that out even more.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Anyone else want to go up next? Chris, come on, you got loads to say.
Once again, I'm going to say thank you so much to Val, Mustafa, and Gabriel for actually just reviving freestyle football in Africa. Ashley will attest to that, because it was really dying in terms of like us not getting, paid for the actual sport. You know what I mean? But what I would like to get it to the leaders and to the companies, and I know there's some guys online now. I'm going to get in trouble for this. The company actually watching is, this is not geared to you, Val or Gab, but to other companies also. When organizing, especially these events, getting judges, getting people that are gonna, how can I put it? Example, an advert. Kamalio and I and a couple of other freestylers went to audition for an advert. And this beverage company decided, no, these guys are not good enough. They called the guy from Europe, paid them X amount of thousands of euros. When we looked at what we were going to get paid and what this freestyler from Europe came to do, we could actually do the same, if not better. He got paid way more, and they also got flights and whatever. So what I'm trying to say to the African leaders and to the people that are organizing these events who got the money, please look at the African freestylers first, because when we look up at the people that are judging or people that are up there doing, I'm talking as a freestyler now, that are doing shows, we need to identify with a person that from the continent, so that we can also get, how can I put it, Ashley, you can help with this Zulu there. You can also get, how can I put it? We can be motivated to do more. You know what I mean? So I've never seen in a European championship, then there's an African judge being invited. If you get what I'm trying to say.
You know what I see. Sorry, Dan. I was just going to say quickly that I see Chris. In a way, I see myself reflected a little bit in him, in this passion to fight for his country and his people to be showcased and put out there. And I think that's great. You have to feel proud that you're a voice in wanting for your people to be represented. And I think that's something great. And I think that this is a new beginning in a way for Africa, thanks to all these people that are now investing and putting effort, wanting to showcase freestyle. And I think that with you and everybody else, all the freestylers, if you keep going, if you keep training, if you keep speaking up, it's going to lead to where you want it to be. And have faith in these people like Mustafa and Val and Gab and all these people that are putting together these events. It's something that is going to lead somewhere.
That's it. And also I'd probably say it's talking about believing in your own continent, right? And I think that's where one big difference, if people want to compare between football and freestyle football, in football, everyone looks to Europe because of the Premier League and the Bundesliga and all of these big brands and the big footballers. Whereas freestyle is so individually bespoke, country to country, that it's not about benchmarking against someone else. It's about celebrating your culture and your own way of enjoying freestyle, and the talent is phenomenal. And so yeah, it's believe in what you've got on your doorstep, and that will help the community. It will help your own economy as well. So, thank you for that. Anyone else? Gabriel, any final words from you out there?
Yeah,
I know it's late there in Japan, so you'll do it. Thank you for being here. It's the middle of the night for you.
It's only 1:20 in the morning. It's fine. Well, one thing that I've always appreciated of working every time I've gone to Africa to work there is the creativity and adaptability. And that are two things that are so synonymous with freestyle. You have to be creative and you have to be adaptable to what's around you. So it's one thing that when I first got involved in the sport, and it was kind of forced upon me, But it was actually a pleasure. When I first saw it, I was like, what am I going to do with this? But then I started watching it. I was like, okay, there's something here. And just watching how creative everybody can get, it is something that in Africa can really be a big movement, because it is something that is very symbolic to African sport, is being more creative with the ball. If you look at the players that are out there, the ones that are happiest with the ball at their feet are the African players. The Europeans so many times are so, let's go for the strategy, and they kind of lose focus. It's something that we've lost in Brazil. In Brazil, which, if people that don't know me, I'm actually Brazilian. Brazilians used to have so much fun playing football, and now they're trying to be too European, and that's why we kind of lost our way, and that's why we lose 7-1 to Germany these days. But that's one thing that Africa has so much of, is creativity. And so the other thing is, when you're being a freestyler, be an African freestyler. Don't feel like you have to do the same things that the Europeans are doing, that you have to use the same music that they're using. If you have a beat from your own country, use that. Like add some flair to it. I was in Senegal earlier this year, and we were doing the Olympic boxing championships, and everybody wanted to do it Olympic standard. And I was like, look, we're in Senegal, Senegalize it. So it's the same thing here. If you're South African, give it a South African twist. From Mauritius, give it a Mauritian twist. In Cabo Verde, same thing. Give it your own twist from your country, because that will give you an edge. Again, like Laura was saying, if you're comparing yourself to people that aren't really that comparable, they're going to have the advantage. You need to find that uniqueness, and there's so much uniqueness in that entire continent. And it's one thing I always find it. I try to avoid saying when I worked in Africa. The reason I say it is because I've worked in many countries. Everybody always encompasses it as one big country. And we all know that every single country has its own uniqueness, and each within that country too. So find that one and just be unique. Because I know freestyle in Africa definitely will be a great movement in the future.
Thanks, Gabriel. Yeah, very, very true points. How are we doing? Ashley, any final words from you down there? He's not awake still, is he? You're on mute, my friend. Ask, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm mute. I'm back. Yeah. No, I was just also wanting to add to Chris. This I'm probably gonna, since we are live, it's a live challenge to the WFFA and Mr. Val. On the next African Championship 2021, if it's a live event, can we have one judge from Africa?
Noted and very fair.
I'm just putting it bluntly out there. We do have guys who have judged Super Bowl, like your Camarios, your Brian Lockyer, your Rock, probably just the works. So yeah, I think it's just attesting to what Chris was saying. So I'm just gonna shoot and not go around the bush, because it's the African Championship. Even from the top, it would be nice to see one of the judges, and we do want one more European judge. Yeah, it's always nice for flavor. But yeah, I was just saying that, and I think maybe this is, people just maybe say it's overrated, but very, very, very. Well, I just want to say we appreciate you, Mr. Val. You've done a lot. Nothing has been happening in Africa. It would be unfair of us to not say thank you, because you've brought opportunities, and not only just that, knowledge, and you've shared some light on how we can also do things. We don't need to be of certain level, but you bring yourself to our level to help us wherever we can and where we need help. So thank you very much on that, for fighting for Africa and for making sure that Africa is thriving on the freestyle football part and everywhere else. And to everyone at the WFFA, Pego, I know you somewhere in there. Thank you very much for pushing for the structure. The structure does actually help. And I've seen it doing wonders, especially in the southern region of Africa. Having that structure of communication so that even when the communication comes, it's able to get to all the freestylers and stuff like that. Mr. Daniel Wood, I think on the collaboration part, you've always helped. And I think maybe I would extend this also to Mr. Val. If you may know people who are willing to help in certain countries, like for instance, I'm in South Africa, maybe you might know a company which could partner up with me in South Africa to do something. I think maybe such referrals would help. It goes also to any other country. Maybe you know someone in Ghana. I think maybe you can also help something like that happen in Ghana, Egypt, anywhere in Africa. I think those collaborations would really help and take us forward. Because if we don't speak, there's a saying in Africa, but which means if a baby does not cry, then we would never know that the baby is starving. So it means if we don't go out there and ask for help from the likes of you, Mr. Daniel Wood, and everyone else, who would probably be just trying to run our own race. We need help here and there. We need to admit it. That's the only way we can grow. Same goes to the freestylers. If you need help, inbox all those big freestylers, ask them whatever you need to ask them, and I'm sure they'll be more than willing to assist. From me, thank you.
It's a family, my brother. Don't you worry. We're all in it together. Very, very nice words as well. Thanks for summarizing that. And probably worth just shouting out, definitely worth Mr. Joel Azari, who I know is watching in here, and where else are we? There's a few other people here, but all the key leaders really. Sofiane Masalek, who looks after the Northern African countries. Thank you for all the work that you do as well. Val, any final words from yourself before we close this?
Yes, thank you, everybody. And for me, I actually think that for Africa, freestyle football should and ought to be our new religion. And I say this very seriously. In Africa, football has found home. In Africa, dance has found home. In Africa, we own music. In fact, I'm going to conclude my remarks playing one of the most beautiful songs I've listened to very recently. And when you fuse these three together, you will see why I make those statements, that we are not going to stop until we domesticate freestyle football in Africa. And I love what I've heard here about finding our own uniqueness and basically let's grow it in an African way. And that's what you're going to be seeing going forward. And I also want to identify myself with the comments made about, identifying good judges that can come out of Africa. As a matter of fact, and I don't want us to also misunderstand part of what we've done in the past. It is good, I use that word collaboration. It's good to have professionals, world champions, and all of these who can come and the young freestylers can see what they can look up to when they go on those global stage. And that was the value in bringing the global champions down to Nigeria for those African championships. And if not for this call, probably wouldn't know what a legend Chris was, for instance. So it's good to identify some of our grown, legends who we can now begin to leverage their skills and the opportunities they've had in life to see how we can all help together, come together and grow the game of freestyle football. So I don't even want to wait, Ashley, for 2021. I will go back to Daniel and say this year, this online, I want to see one African on board. So we will discuss it and come back to you. But I want to honestly say again, this game deserves a lot more attention, more funding, more support. And from my own perspective and my team in Nigeria, we will keep doing our best. And I like what I've also heard, the challenge that Ashley has posed. Incidentally, some of the companies that support us in Nigeria are South African. Super Sport is South African, MTN is South African. So those collaborations can happen. Same thing with what Europe does in Egypt. So let us talk more, let's engage more, let's see how we can brainstorm more and take this to a level it should be. So Thank you, and thank you again, Mustafa. But if you don't mind, this music is out of I mean, I love a lot of Nigerian music, but this is out of South Africa. So this is what I want to.
Why don't you? Okay, hold that thought. Hold that thought, because we can play out. I know. End. You can play out at the very end. Okay.
We'll fade out with it.
And then we'll post the link below so everyone can watch it and listen to it afterwards as well. But no, thank you everyone very, very much for those final words. Let me just now draw this to a close and bring Mustafa back to the table as well, from S.I.R.E.M Sports. Thank you so much for organising this. It's been a really enlightening and exciting conversation to look ahead and to celebrate a continent where a sport has thrived, really just hasn't been known about. Okay, it's been in the streets for so long, and now it's finally coming to the big stage. I think, from my words, the final sort of closing points would be it's critical to get more events, more platforms for the sport to be seen, and the community needs to work together. We need to club these countries together and help one another, share skills, share ideas, in order to grow this sport. It's open to all, as we know. All you need is a ball. So let's keep true to that saying, and let's believe it and live it every single day. But clearly there does need to be some institutional support, and thanks to the words and the experiences of the beach games and other competitions, you know, we're learning. The sport is learning. It's still young. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, but certainly we want to all encourage these conversations at a local level. Let's start engaging with more NOCs and other institutions to help raise awareness for this sport. And on that note, to compare, you know, we're never going to be like any other sport. Freestyle is unique. But one thing that you, Mustafa, to pass on to you now to finalize, one thing that you said to me since leaving Cabo Verde was the work that you did with 3-on-3 basketball, actually, and the relevance in so many ways, you know, in terms of how such a small sport within the bubble of basketball has accelerated through into the Olympic movement in their own way. And I completely resonate. I think there are certain things about freestyle that could do a similar sort of journey. And so again, thank you very much for organizing this and for your time. Over to you to finish this.
Right, thank you very much. I really would like to warmly thank you guys, particularly the speakers, for the participants also for being part of this web conferences, Africa Talk Sports. And like I say, Valentin, thank you very much, Laura, Ashley, Chris, Dan, and a special thanks to Gabrielle, who's up until now. And I'm not that really surprised by the enthusiasm that you have shown in sharing your experiences and knowledge in this, and it has made this web conferences a success. So that's has again surprised our expectation, and may God protect you and protect your respective family from the COVID-19. So hopefully we will have more chance to get together and learn from Valentin, from Dan, from Gabrielle, from Laura, from all of you. And thanks also to the guys who was participating in the chat box. So it was a really interesting debate, and thanks once again. Thank you.
Thanks, Mustafa. Val, do you want to play your music to see us out?
Yeah.
Yes.
African music.
Beautiful.
Imagine if the freestylers are performing with this. Imagine that. Laura, I want to see a video with this song, you know?
Okay, you have to give me the name.
I will send it to you.
Yeah, but for sure, that's what I'd say. You guys have an amazing identity. You guys have amazing energy, culture, music. Use that to your advantage. That's you, and you have to create your your version
Yes.
and your identity of freestyle, and the world has to know about it. And it's you, and it's yours, and you have it. It's there.
Right.
Thank you, everybody.
So guys,
Thank
Thank you.
see you, yeah?
Thank
All
you
right.
so
So Dan,
Thank
I
you.
can't see who's talking now.